Joel Goldsmith discovered something that changes everything about that famous Bible verse. When Jesus said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free," he wasn't talking about information. He was revealing the most powerful spiritual practice ever given to humanity. Most people treat this as inspiration, but Joel showed it's actually an instruction manual for consciousness transformation. The word know in the original teaching means direct spiritual realization, not intellectual understanding. It's the difference between reading about water and drinking it. When you truly know the truth in the mystical sense, something shifts in your consciousness that cannot be reversed. This knowing dissolves every limitation, every fear, every false belief that has imprisoned you. Here's what Joel discovered. The truth that sets you free isn't a concept you learn. It's a presence you recognize within your own consciousness. This truth is already complete, already whole, already operating. Your only work is recognition, not acquisition. When you stop seeking truth outside yourself and start recognizing it within, freedom becomes your natural state, not a distant goal. The freedom Jesus spoke about isn't freedom from circumstances. Joel taught that real freedom is freedom from the belief that circumstances have power over your spiritual identity. You can be physically imprisoned, yet spiritually free, or physically free, yet mentally imprisoned. This understanding revolutionizes everything because it places freedom where it actually belongs, in consciousness itself. Most spiritual seekers make a critical mistake. They try to change their external world to feel free. But Joel revealed that freedom isn't a condition you create. It's a truth you recognize. The moment you know that your true nature is already free, untouched by any human condition, circumstances lose their grip. This isn't positive thinking or denial. It's recognizing what's eternally true about your spiritual being. This practice requires daily recognition, not occasional inspiration. Joel would spend hours in meditation simply recognizing the truth of being, not affirming it, not visualizing it, but resting in the recognition that consciousness itself is already free, whole, and complete. This recognition gradually dissolves the mental patterns that created your sense of limitation. Let me show you exactly how this recognition practice works. You don't start by trying to feel free or become free. You start by recognizing this truth. The I that I am is already the fullness of God expressed. Not will be, not can be, but already is. This isn't affirmation. It's recognition of what exists before you even think about it. When a problem appears, your habitual response is to fix it, fight it, or pray for it to change. Joel's approach is radically different. You pause and recognize, this appearance has no power to change the truth of my being. You're not denying the appearance. You're recognizing that it cannot alter your spiritual identity. This recognition creates an inner stillness where transformation naturally occurs. Practice this throughout your day. When anxiety appears, instead of trying to calm yourself, recognize the truth. I am that which cannot be anxious. When lack appears, recognize, I am the consciousness of infinite supply. You're not creating these truths. You're recognizing what's already established in consciousness. This is the knowing that sets you free, and it operates through recognition, never through effort. Joel emphasized that this practice unfolds gradually, not instantly. In the beginning, recognition may feel mechanical or intellectual. You might practice for weeks and still feel trapped by circumstances. This is normal. You're retraining consciousness to rest in truth rather than react to appearances. The recognition deepens naturally as you persist, moving from mental exercise to lived experience. The freedom that emerges isn't dramatic or emotional. It's a quiet inner stability that remains present regardless of external chaos. You notice that situations that once devastated you now barely register, not because you're suppressing feelings, but because you've recognized a deeper truth that circumstances cannot touch. This is the freedom Jesus meant, and it's available through patient, consistent recognition. Some practitioners experience shifts within weeks. Others need months of daily practice. The timeline doesn't matter because the practice itself is the freedom. You're not practicing to become free someday. You're practicing the recognition that consciousness is already free right now. Every moment of recognition strengthens your awareness of this truth until it becomes your permanent state of being, not just a temporary experience. Olivia spent 30 years in corporate leadership. outwardly successful but inwardly imprisoned by constant anxiety about performance. She discovered Joel's teachings and began the recognition practice hesitantly. For the first month, nothing seemed to change. Her anxiety persisted, her sleep remained disrupted, her mind raced with worst-case scenarios about every business decision. But Olivia committed to the practice anyway. Each morning before work, she'd spend 20 minutes simply recognizing, "The I that I am cannot be threatened." She didn't try to believe it or feel it. She just recognized it as truth. During anxious moments throughout the day, she'd pause and silently recognize that her true nature was untouched by any business outcome, any colleague's opinion, any market condition. Around week 6, Olivia noticed something subtle. During a board meeting where she was being questioned aggressively, a strange calm emerged. Not forced calm, but an inner knowing that nothing happening in that room could actually diminish her. The anxiety was still present in her body, but there was now a deeper awareness watching it, unmoved by it. This was the beginning of freedom emerging through recognition, not through changed circumstances. David's story reveals how this practice works with physical challenges. Diagnosed with a chronic condition that doctors said was permanent, he felt imprisoned by his body's limitations. Traditional prayer hadn't helped, positive thinking felt hollow, and he was losing hope. Then he encountered Joel's teaching on recognition and decided to approach his situation completely differently. Instead of praying for healing, David began recognizing the truth of his spiritual being. "I am consciousness, not body. The truth of my being is wholeness itself." This wasn't denial of his condition, it was recognition of a deeper reality. He practiced this recognition multiple times daily, not to make his body heal, but simply because the recognition itself felt like truth emerging. Over 3 months, David's symptoms began shifting. Not dramatically at first, just subtle improvements his doctors couldn't explain. More importantly, his relationship with his body transformed. The condition no longer defined him because he'd recognized his true identity as consciousness itself. Whether the body improved or not, he'd found the freedom Jesus promised. The physical healing that followed was secondary to the consciousness shift that had already liberated him. Rachel's transformation shows how recognition works with relationships. Her marriage was failing, filled with resentment and disappointment. She'd tried everything: counseling, communication techniques, even separation. Nothing worked because she was trying to change her husband rather than recognize truth. When she found Joel's teachings, she reluctantly tried a completely different approach. Rachel stopped trying to fix her marriage and started recognizing spiritual truth. "The person before me is consciousness appearing as form. I am consciousness recognizing itself." This felt strange initially, especially when her husband was being difficult, but she persisted, recognizing truth rather than reacting to behavior. Something began shifting in her perception, not in his behavior. After several weeks of consistent recognition practice, Rachel noticed her husband responding differently. He was actually the same, but her recognition of his true spiritual nature somehow allowed his better qualities to emerge. The marriage didn't become perfect, but it became workable because Rachel had found freedom from her judgmental perceptions. She'd discovered that knowing the truth about spiritual identity actually does set you free from relationship imprisonment. Thomas found this practice during a financial crisis that threatened everything he'd built. His business was collapsing, debts were mounting, and bankruptcy seemed inevitable. Desperate, he began Joel's recognition practice, even though it seemed irrelevant to his practical crisis. He'd recognize, "I am the consciousness of infinite supply," not as affirmation, but as recognition of spiritual truth. For 2 months, his external situation continued deteriorating while he practiced recognition daily. This was his dark night, where the practice seemed useless against harsh reality. But Thomas persisted because the recognition itself brought a strange peace that circumstances couldn't touch. He was discovering freedom in the midst of crisis, not after the crisis ended. Then opportunities began appearing that Thomas couldn't have predicted or planned. A former colleague offered partnership in a new venture. An unexpected settlement came through. Within 6 months, Thomas had completely rebuilt his financial life, but more importantly, he'd discovered that his true security was consciousness itself, not bank accounts. The recognition had set him free from financial fear permanently. If these transformation stories show you a different way of spiritual practice, like this video to help others discover Joel's wisdom, subscribe for more consciousness teachings that actually transform, and comment which story resonated most deeply with your current journey. Joel taught a powerful companion practice he called recognizing the invisible. While you're recognizing truth about yourself, you simultaneously recognize that an invisible spiritual reality is operating beyond what your senses report. This isn't imagination or visualization. It's acknowledging that more is present than what appears. This dual recognition creates what Joel called the atmosphere of consciousness, where transformation occurs naturally. Practice this by pausing several times daily and recognizing, there is an invisible divine presence operating in this moment that my eyes cannot see. You're not creating this presence through recognition. You're acknowledging what's already here. This shifts your awareness from visible effects to invisible cause. The more you recognize the invisible, the more its activity becomes evident in your visible experience. This recognition is especially powerful during difficult circumstances. When everything visible says failure, lack, or limitation, you pause and recognize the invisible divine reality operating beneath appearances. This isn't denial or escapism. It's training consciousness to recognize the deeper dimension where solutions already exist. Joel found that people who practiced this recognition experienced what others called miracles, though he understood them as natural spiritual law. Another technique Joel emphasized is what he called impersonalization. When someone seems to be causing you problems, you practice recognizing that you're not dealing with a person, you're dealing with an impersonal belief appearing as that person. This recognition removes personal judgment and allows you to see the spiritual truth behind the human behavior. It's incredibly freeing. Here's how to practice it. When someone irritates or threatens you, silently recognize, this is not a person acting against me. This is an impersonal belief of separation appearing. You're recognizing that the troublesome behavior isn't personal. It's a universal false belief temporarily operating through that individual. This recognition dissolves resentment and opens space for truth to appear. Joel discovered that impersonalization also applies to yourself. When you're experiencing negative emotions or destructive patterns, recognize, this isn't the real me. This is an impersonal belief temporarily operating. This recognition prevents self-condemnation and allows you to address the belief rather than battle yourself. Freedom comes through recognizing what's impersonal rather than making everything personal and taking it into your identity. Joel's third complementary technique is resting in the Word. After you've practiced recognition, spend time in complete silence, resting in the truth you've recognized. This isn't meditation with a goal. It's simply being present with the truth without thought or effort. In this rest, the truth you recognized begins integrating into consciousness at levels deeper than intellect can reach. The practice is simple but profound. After your morning recognition practice, sit in silence for 10 to 20 minutes. No mantras, no visualizations, no trying to feel anything. Just rest in the awareness that truth is already established in consciousness. If thoughts arise, gently return to resting. This rest is where the actual transformation happens because you're allowing truth to do its work without interference. Joel taught that most people practice spiritually, but never rest spiritually. They're always seeking, always working, always trying to achieve. But truth doesn't need your effort to be true. It needs your recognition, and then your rest. In the rest, consciousness assimilates the recognition, and it becomes lived experience rather than intellectual knowledge. This rest is essential for the knowing that actually sets you free. The fourth technique is living from recognition. Throughout your day, let every action flow from the recognition you've practiced rather than from human planning or willpower. This means before speaking, you pause and recognize truth. Before making decisions, you recognize truth. Before responding to challenges, you recognize truth. Your entire life becomes an expression of recognized truth rather than reaction to appearances. This isn't about perfection, it's about direction. You'll forget and react habitually many times daily. When you notice this, simply recognize truth again without self-judgment. The practice is training consciousness to make recognition your default response to life rather than fear, desire, or calculation. Over time, this becomes natural, and your entire experience shifts from human effort to spiritual flow. Joel emphasized that these 4 techniques work together. Recognition identifies truth. Acknowledging the invisible expands your awareness of where truth operates. Impersonalization removes personal barriers to truth. Resting allows truth to integrate, and living from recognition makes truth practical. Together, they create what Joel called the consciousness of truth that actually sets you free from every human limitation. The first major challenge you'll face is the nothing's happening phase. You practice recognition faithfully for weeks, and your circumstances remain unchanged. Your mind screams that this isn't working, that you're wasting time, that you need practical action instead of spiritual practice. This is where most people abandon the path, and it's exactly where persistence becomes crucial. Joel warned about this phase explicitly. He taught that consciousness transformation happens in dimensions you cannot perceive with your senses. Just because your external world looks the same doesn't mean nothing is shifting. The recognition practice is working at the level of consciousness itself, dissolving false beliefs and establishing truth. This inner work must happen before outer changes appear. The solution is consistency without attachment to timeline. Commit to 90 days of recognition practice regardless of visible results. Joel found that 3 months of daily practice is usually when the inner shift becomes strong enough to manifest externally. But your practice cannot depend on results, or you're still trapped in cause and effect thinking. Practice because recognizing truth is its own freedom, whether circumstances change today or 6 months from now. The second challenge is what Joel called the warfare of the carnal mind. As you practice recognition of truth, your habitual thought patterns fight back aggressively. Doubt intensifies, fear becomes louder, negative thoughts multiply. This isn't failure. It's actually evidence that your recognition practice is working. The false belief system is defending itself because it senses its dissolution approaching. During this phase, you might experience intense resistance to your practice. You'll find every excuse to skip your recognition time. You'll feel foolish doing it. You'll hear inner voices mocking the entire approach. Joel taught that this warfare is temporary but intense. The key is recognizing that these thoughts are impersonal, not personal. They're the old consciousness pattern resisting the new truth you're establishing. Push through this warfare with compassionate firmness toward yourself. When resistance arises, recognize. This resistance has no power to stop truth from being truth. Don't fight the thoughts, don't suppress them. Simply recognize their temporary appearances while truth is eternal reality. This phase typically lasts 2 to 4 weeks of daily practice, after which a noticeable peace emerges. The third challenge involves isolation and misunderstanding. As you practice Joel's teachings, people around you won't understand your approach. They'll offer advice that contradicts recognition practice. They'll think you're being passive or in denial. Some relationships may become strained because your consciousness shift makes others uncomfortable. This social pressure can undermine your commitment if you're not prepared for it. Joel experienced this himself. His mystical approach puzzled traditional religious people and seemed impractical to materialists. He learned to practice silently without defending or explaining unless someone genuinely wanted to understand. Your recognition practice is personal between you and truth. It doesn't require anyone else's approval or understanding. Let your transformed life be your testimony, not your words. The solution is finding community, even if virtual, with others practicing consciousness transformation. Joel's students formed study groups where they could share experiences without judgment. Today you can find online communities exploring these teachings. Having even one person who understands this path makes the social challenge much easier. But ultimately, your commitment must be strong enough to practice alone if necessary. The fourth challenge is the temptation to return to traditional prayer when crisis hits. You're practicing recognition consistently, then a major crisis erupts. Every instinct screams to petition, beg, or bargain with God for help. The recognition practice suddenly seems inadequate for the emergency at hand. This is the test that determines whether you've truly understood Joel's teaching or just added it to old patterns. Joel taught that crisis is exactly when recognition practice matters most. When you're tempted to return to petitionary prayer, that's your opportunity to prove to yourself that you trust truth over appearances. Instead of begging God to change circumstances, you recognize the truth that God, being infinite consciousness, is already all that exists. This recognition in crisis is advanced practice, but it's where real freedom emerges. The way through is remembering that recognition isn't passive. It's the most powerful spiritual activity because it aligns your consciousness with reality itself. When crisis appears, increase your recognition practice rather than abandoning it. Recognize truth more frequently, rest in truth more deeply, live from truth more consistently. This is how you discover that truth actually does set you free, even in circumstances that seem impossible. If these challenge-breaking insights resonate with your spiritual journey, like to support this teaching, subscribe for advanced Joel Goldsmith practices that work in real life, and comment which challenge you're ready to transform through recognition right now. Linda's advanced case shows how recognition practice works with chronic pain that doctors couldn't resolve. After a year of Joel's practices, she'd experienced some relief, but the pain persisted daily. Instead of seeing this as failure, Linda deepened her recognition practice by adding a crucial element. She began recognizing that pain itself was trying to teach her something about the nature of consciousness. Rather than resisting pain or trying to recognize it away, Linda practiced recognizing truth while fully present with the sensation. She'd sit with the pain and recognize, I am the consciousness observing the sensation, not the sensation itself. This subtle shift changed everything. She wasn't denying pain or fighting it. She was recognizing her true identity as awareness itself, which cannot be harmed by any sensation it observes. Over 6 months, Linda's relationship with pain transformed completely. The intensity decreased gradually, but more importantly, pain no longer controlled her life even when present. She'd discovered what Joel meant by freedom. She could feel pain and simultaneously be free because she'd recognized her true nature as consciousness itself. This is advanced practice that transforms suffering into a doorway to deeper recognition of truth. Michael's situation involved business competition that threatened his company's survival. A larger competitor was systematically trying to destroy his business through aggressive tactics. His initial recognition practice focused on his own consciousness, which helped his anxiety. But the external threat continued. He realized he needed to apply Joel's teaching about recognizing truth in others, even enemies. Michael began an advanced practice of recognizing the truth about his competitor, not their behavior, but their spiritual identity. He'd spend time daily recognizing that consciousness appearing as my competitor is the same one consciousness appearing as me. This felt almost impossible initially because his human sense wanted to demonize them. But Joel taught that truth is universal, not selective. After 3 months of this advanced recognition, something unexpected happened. The competitor's tactics began backfiring in ways Michael couldn't have orchestrated. Opportunities emerged that his competitor couldn't match. But the deeper transformation was in Michael himself. He discovered that recognizing truth about others is recognizing truth about consciousness itself. When you see only one consciousness appearing as all people, competition becomes cooperation at a level beyond human understanding. Isabella's advanced case involved her teenage daughter's rebellion that was tearing their family apart. Traditional parenting approaches failed, therapy seemed useless, and Isabella felt completely helpless. She'd been practicing Joel's recognition for herself with good results, but applying it to her daughter felt different. How do you recognize truth when someone you love is making destructive choices? Joel's teaching on impersonalization became crucial here. Isabella practiced recognizing that her daughter's rebellion wasn't personal, it was an impersonal belief of separation temporarily operating. She stopped trying to control or fix her daughter, and instead recognized the truth. My daughter's true nature is divine consciousness, regardless of current behavior. This recognition was daily, multiple times, especially during conflicts. The breakthrough came gradually over 8 months. Isabella noticed her own reactions changing first. She could remain calm during daughter's outbursts because she was seeing beyond behavior to truth. This calm presence created space for her daughter to make different choices. The rebellion didn't disappear overnight, but slowly, genuine connection returned. Isabella discovered that recognizing truth about loved ones gives them room to discover it themselves. James faced the ultimate test. Terminal diagnosis with months to live. He'd practiced Joel's teachings for years, but this was the moment when everything theoretical became practical. Death isn't something you can avoid with recognition practice, but Joel taught that even death cannot touch your true spiritual nature. James decided to use his remaining time to discover if this was actually true. His recognition practice became intense and focused. I am consciousness itself, which has no beginning and no end. This body is temporary, but the I that I am is eternal. James wasn't in denial about his physical condition. He was recognizing a deeper truth about existence. He spent hours daily in recognition and rest, going deeper into the truth of being than he'd ever gone before. What James discovered transformed not just him, but everyone around him. As his body weakened, his consciousness grew stronger and clearer. He experienced a freedom and peace that medical personnel called remarkable. He wasn't afraid because he'd recognized through direct experience that consciousness itself cannot die. His body passed, but James had proven to himself that truth actually does set you free, even from the ultimate human fear. His testimony inspired dozens to take this path seriously. After months or years of recognition practice, something shifts permanently in consciousness. You realize you're no longer practicing to become free. You're practicing from freedom. The truth you've been recognizing is now your lived experience, not just an intellectual concept. This doesn't mean problems disappear. It means your relationship with problems transforms completely. They no longer define you or control you. This permanent shift feels like waking up from a dream. You see clearly that you were never actually imprisoned by circumstances. You were imprisoned by believing circumstances had power over your spiritual identity. That belief is gone, dissolved through consistent recognition of truth. What remains is quiet certainty that your true nature is untouchable by any human condition. This is the freedom Jesus promised, and Joel revealed how to access. People at this stage often describe feeling like they're living in a different world, though externally, everything looks the same. The difference is internal. There's a constant awareness of truth operating beneath appearances. Challenges still arise, but they're met with recognition rather than fear. This consciousness becomes self-sustaining because recognizing truth is now your natural response to life, not something you have to remember to do. The transformation extends into every area of life organically. Your relationships improve because you're recognizing truth about everyone you meet. Your work becomes more effective because you're operating from consciousness rather than anxiety. Your health often improves because your body is no longer carrying the burden of false beliefs. Even your creative expression expands because consciousness itself is infinitely creative. But Joel warned against making these improvements the goal. They're natural byproducts of consciousness transformation, not objectives to pursue. The moment you practice recognition to get better circumstances, you've fallen back into cause and effect thinking. True freedom is recognizing that consciousness is already complete regardless of circumstances. The improvements come because consciousness expressing freely naturally creates harmonious conditions. This is why some practitioners experience dramatic life changes while others experience subtle shifts. The external changes don't measure your spiritual progress. What matters is whether you've recognized your true identity as consciousness itself. That recognition is the freedom, the transformation, the goal. Everything else is just consciousness expressing in form, and form is always changing. Your freedom cannot depend on form. It must rest in the recognition of truth itself. Living from this transformed consciousness means you become what Joel called a transparency for truth. You're no longer trying to demonstrate truth or prove it works. You simply recognize truth and let it flow through you naturally. This makes you incredibly effective in the world because you're not operating from ego or fear. You're allowing consciousness itself to direct your actions. This stage requires ongoing recognition practice, not because you're incomplete, but because recognition itself is the joy and purpose of spiritual life. You're not maintaining your freedom through practice. You're expressing your freedom as practice. The difference is subtle, but crucial. You practice because recognizing truth is what consciousness does naturally when it's awake to itself. Joel taught that at this stage, your life becomes your message. You don't need to teach or preach unless called to do so. Your presence, your actions, your responses to life naturally demonstrate what it means to know the truth. Others feel the freedom in you even if they can't articulate it. You become a living demonstration that Jesus' promise is real. Knowing the truth actually does set you free, completely and permanently. Here's the ultimate truth Joel wanted everyone to understand. You are already free. The truth isn't something you achieve through practice. It's what you are beneath all false beliefs. Recognition practice doesn't create freedom. It removes the obstacles that prevented you from experiencing the freedom that's already present. This is the great secret hidden in Jesus' words. Your journey forward is simple but profound. Practice recognition daily, not to become something you're not, but to remember what you are. When challenges appear, recognize truth instead of reacting from fear. When others suffer, recognize their true nature as consciousness itself. When success comes, recognize it's consciousness expressing, not personal achievement. Let every moment be an opportunity to recognize truth. The freedom Joel discovered through Jesus' teaching is available to you right now. Not someday after enough practice, but now through recognition of what's already true. You are consciousness itself, appearing as individual form. That consciousness is free, whole, complete, and untouchable by any human condition. Know this truth not intellectually but through direct recognition, and you will be free indeed. This is Joel's gift to you, and it works for anyone willing to practice recognition consistently. If your spiritual consciousness expanded through these Joel Goldsmith secrets, like this video to help others find this path, subscribe for more transformative mystical Christianity teachings, and comment, "I am transformed," to declare your commitment to recognition practice starting today.